There's no one time that awakens you. You wake up slowly. As I said, you wake up the day you're born, and then you develop. I grew up in an area of the country that was full of forests. We had no cedars where I live, but we had oaks and we had pines and we had all kinds of vegetation, but we did not have cedars. And to see the cedars, we had to go very far away to see them. And it became a challenge that, why do we have to travel so far to be able to see the cedars? Why can't we have them in more places? It is the single most popular emblem, logo of Lebanon. Everybody uses it. Of course, beginning with the government, the national flag, the stamps, everything. Most major organizations have the word cedar in them, and the Lebanese poetry and songs are full of references to the beauty of the cedar and how important it is, and so on. Which is a bit ironic, because here we praise the cedar and we put it as the symbol and emblem of our country, but we don't take good care of it in the forests. The cedar tree as a source of wood disappeared from Lebanon hundreds of years ago. So many of the generations in Lebanon today never used cedar wood commercially because they just didn't have it. It had been used previously. Been used by who? By all the civilizations that we read about, beginning with the Sumerians 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, King Solomon and his famous temple, the Persians, Alexander, Rome, the Romans, the Arab empires of the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and then the Crusades, and then the Ottoman Empire. So you see, all the great civilizations of the Mediterranean basin and this area, and we're not talking about the Far East, we're talking about the Middle East, this area here. They all came and they all harvested the cedar wood. And it's important to note here that the civilizations that came did not have forests. The Egyptians didn't have forests. The Babylonians in Iraq didn't have forests. And so they needed this big trunks of wood to build to finish their palaces with. And of course, the cedar is well known for its aroma. It has an amazing smell that comes out of the resin. And that resin is a preservative. So it serves both purposes. It smells good and it keeps the wood from decaying. It is, I think, very important here to stress the fact that the Phoenicians who lived along the coast of Lebanon were the major traders of cedar wood. And they had Byblos in the north, they had Sidon and Tyre in the south, and those were the major centers of export and trade in cedar wood. And as we said, cedar wood was used for a number of things. It was used to build ships, probably the most important use. It was also to build palaces, especially the roofing. The walls were usually always made of stone. But the roofing and the doors, they had huge, magnificent doors and pillars. Those were usually made from cedar wood, but mostly in building ships. Ships for trading, as the Phoenicians did, and ships of war, especially the Greeks and the Persians. The Greeks and the Persians were always fighting each other, and they were always fighting each other on sea, in battle, marine battles. And they needed to build these ships. Among them was what they called the triremes. The triremes were the three-level ships with masts and with rowers, slaves usually. And so the Persians wanted the wood to build their ships, the Greeks wanted their wood to build the ships, and a lot of the battles that were taking place were because of this demand for wood. And when the Greeks on their islands had wood, they didn't come here. The Persians at one time had wood, they didn't come here. But when they exhausted their wood, they both came here to get the cedar. Why they did this? There's a good reason for it. First of all, the cedar forests were plentiful. The cedar wood was an excellent wood. It was hard. And because it had plenty of resin and smelled good and was easy to work. And a lot of woodworkers were able to cut very thin slices of veneer and place it in the palaces of the kings. And they liked this very, very much. And especially in the funerary practices of the Egyptians, when they buried their dead, they not only used the resin for mummification, but most of the furniture and the boats that they took with them into the afterlife were made of cedar wood. And until today, when they discover an ancient burial ground, they can still smell the cedar when they open the chamber. Among the uses which we haven't talked about is for firewood. They used it to warm their homes. They used it to cook their food. Of course, they used other woods as well. The cedar does not only grow alone. Cedar grows in mixed forests as well. And so the importance of the pines, many different kinds of pine. Oaks, 10, 12 different kinds of oaks. And the fir tree. The fir tree is very important because it is a light wood and it grows tall and long, and they liked it for making the masts of ships. If they used cedar wood for the mast of a ship, it became too heavy. So they wanted a lighter wood and they used that. And down under the water for the keel, which is the central portion up below the water, they sometimes used oak. So a ship was never made just of cedar. It was made primarily of cedar, but also using other kinds of wood. But the discovery of the different uses of the wood took place over many centuries until it ran out. The best way to reforest an area is protect it. And that's one of the things you see in the Shouf. In the Shouf area, where there are old cedar forests, you find there is natural regeneration. Thousands of young trees are growing around. Not all of them will live, but nature keeps enough. Since we started, we have noticed the regeneration of all kinds of trees. It's been spectacular. Certain trees that we never saw before suddenly are there. Now, they've always been there, but we never saw them because they were grazed. Now at least we see them, and we see them growing. Flowers that we didn't see before. Insects that lived on these flowers are now increasing. The birds that feed on the insects and feed on the grain are beginning to increase. So it all follows. One thing follows another. The use that we can put the cedar and other trees to is what we call non-consumptive use. Keep them where they are and let people come and see the beauty of nature. Ecotourism. So we are going to use them as part of our ecotourism strategy. People don't want to come to a bare area where they see nothing. They want to come to a forest, especially if it has cedar, especially because of the cultural implications of the cedar and connotations of the cedar. This is the oldest documented tree in history. It has been mentioned in the Old Testament, been mentioned in the New Testament, has been mentioned in a lot of holy books. It is one of the holy trees of the world. People want to see the cedar. I do believe cedars will see a very modest comeback. And that is largely thanks to the younger generation. that are now able to visit the cedar forests, either through their schools or in groups, especially the scouts and and a lot of the ecotourism groups that are taking place. And they're beginning to realize what a beautiful resource it is and what a waste it has been in past generations. And yes, I do believe things are going to get better. But in my opinion, not just in Lebanon and not just in the Middle East, but all around the world, things have to get a lot better. A little better is not enough. Things have to get a lot better. And we have to start investing more in conservation than in consumption. The importance of the cedar is that it is a flagship of conservation. We want to save the cedar because we want to save everything around the cedar, not just the cedar by itself. It becomes an emblem, not just of the country, it becomes an emblem of our desire to save life.